Since taking power once again, Donald Trump has been taking shots across the bows of so many countries. It is hard to keep up with all the executive orders coming out of the White House these days.
Trump's territorial ambitions are real.
Canada.
Why should we be subsidizing Canada?
Mexico.
Criminals, people from jails come through Mexico.
China.
China makes the fentanyl, gives it to Mexico.
Denmark over Greenland. And now, South Africa.
The South African situation is very, very dangerous. There's tremendously bad things going on, including the confiscation of property.
We are, as South Africans, a resilient people, and we will not be bullied.
So I think Canada is going to be a very serious contender to be our 51st state.
Which is alarming for Canada, given Trump's nonstop talk of annexation.
I feel they have to become a state.
It's never going to happen.
Think of it as a real estate development for the future. It would be a beautiful piece of land.
Would the Palestinians have the right to return?
No, they wouldn't, because they're going to have much better housing.
This land is precious and dear. This land is precious and beautiful. How can I leave?
We won't even bother answering Trump's statements, and we will not go to Jordan or Egypt. We will remain steadfast here, God willing.
The United States government is offering you a piece of land of your own.
We have our own land.
No, it's not yours. It's the U.S. government's.
Did they buy it?
No.
Did they trade for it?
No, it's not like that.
Then how can they own it?
He has a point.
We will give you everything you need if you will just submit to living on a reservation.
We need nothing from you.
You can depend on your country to take care of you.
You are not my country.
Mr. Durant, if we could just... Senator Crane has come here to offer your people a better way of life.
Better than what?
Better than what you have.
I like what I have.
Gaza's waterfront property. It could be very valuable to, if people would focus on kind of building up, livelihood. It's a little bit of an unfortunate situation there, but I think from Israel's perspective, I would do my best to move the people out and then clean it up. But I don't think that Israel has stated that they don't want the people to move back there afterwards.
That was Jared Kushner speaking with Harvard University's Middle East Initiative last year, and his comments were strikingly similar to what we heard from President Trump Tuesday about the U.S. taking over and rebuilding Gaza. Kushner is, of course, the president's son-in-law who took a leading role on Middle East policy during the first Trump administration.
What's with Donald Trump's fixation on South Africa? Donald Trump has signed a directive stopping all U.S. foreign aid to South Africa and offered refugee status to Afrikaners, white South Africans, many of whom were complicit in the system of apartheid. Ostensibly, Trump opposes a new law, the Expropriation Act, which gives the ANC-led coalition government the power to expropriate land under certain scenarios. The South African government disputes those arguments, says they're based on misinformation and propaganda. The other angle playing into this story, South Africa also happens to be the country that has taken Israel to the International Court of Justice for genocide. Canada.
Why should we be subsidizing Canada?
Mexico.
Criminals, people from jails come through Mexico.
China.
China makes the fentanyl, gives it to Mexico.
Denmark over Greenland. And now, South Africa.
The South African situation is very, very dangerous. There's tremendously bad things going on, including the confiscation of property.
With the stroke of a pen and an executive order, Trump ended U.S. foreign aid to South Africa and paved the way for Afrikaners, white South Africans, to resettle in America. The order accuses the ANC-led government of using a new law, the Expropriation Act, to discriminate against white farmers and confiscate their land.
When Trump talks about expropriation, he calls it confiscation. A confiscation is when something is taken away without any due process, without any compensation. That doesn't happen in South African law. Expropriation is quite a normal legal process that governments around the world use, and the South African Constitution requires just and equitable compensation. So, in the way of hyping this up, Donald Trump is also othering South Africa, as if we do not have the kinds of legal frameworks that are equivalent to those both in North America and elsewhere around the world.
I actually doubt that Trump knows that much about South Africa or even cares that much about South Africa specifically. This plays into his white voter base. They would probably identify with a mythical white tribe being under threat in Africa under a black government. Geopolitically, it also ties into a rising right-wing populist discourse that draws on fears of blacks, fears of Muslims, fears of immigrants. And this is part of his agenda to punish South Africa for taking Israel to the International Court of Justice, and also part of South Africa's pivoting towards Russia, China, and the BRICS.
Elon Musk has been using his platform and presumably his growing proximity to Donald Trump to juice this story up. He's been spreading statements online by opposition figures like Julius Malema to make the dubious claim that South Africa is a white genocide in waiting in South Africa. Although, more than 3 decades after the end of apartheid, whites still own more than 70% of the private farmland, despite making up just 7% of the population.
If we just go back to the realities on the ground, the people in South Africa who do face the real risks and reality of being rendered homeless and landless are black people who are being evicted from farms, black people who have no place to stay in the city. But all of this is ignored and obscured when somebody with the power of Musk, with the power of Trump, all of these groups managing to dominate the headlines.
Elon Musk was brought up in apartheid South Africa as a white child in South Africa, went to a whites-only school. He would have been indoctrinated into the whole apartheid logic.
2 more aspects of that executive order, one of which was included and one that was not. It cited South Africa's, quote, aggressive position against Israel at the ICJ. The part the executive order left out, South Africa is a member of BRICS, the growing intergovernmental economic alliance that offers itself as an alternative to the G7 bloc led by the US.